Let's welcome in from Toronto Stadium, powered by General Mills, Christian Jack. And you've been there all day, KJ, since early this morning. So you've definitely been a part of the atmosphere. How would you best describe it?
It was a really emotional day, I think, for everybody that was blessed to be inside the stadium. You know, it was one of those moments that you'll never forget if you're a Canadian sports fan. I think it was one of those, the best way to describe it is, you know, when you get married and you send out all the invitations and then you finally get there and you realize everybody came. And that's what it was like. Everybody came, and everywhere we looked, from the fans opening the gates at 11 a.m., everybody I talked to, young and old, fans have been to Mexico to support this team, fans that went to the World Cup in 2022 and in 1986, young fans who were seeing them for the first time. Everybody had a story, and sometimes you just looked at people and they just said, like, I'm going to cry today. And that's what it was about. It was, of course, we'll get to the outcome and the result first, but it was just a coronation of the progress of Canadian football that was really remarkable to watch. You know, a stadium and a city transformed, full of red. Thankfully, they got their moment, and we didn't end with a loss as well, which I think was really important, Andy.
Yeah, but I'm curious to see, because the Mexican fans, they had a duck wearing a Mexican kit. Did we see anything crazy like that? There's no moose on the loose, right?
No, I saw a few things at the beginning in the pre-game ceremonies, but no mooses.
Okay. You've had a chance to speak to the players. Everyone's obviously giving their thoughts on the result today. What are they saying?
Well, a lot of it was, first of all, I spoke to Stefano Stacchio. He told me that we have to respect the point and we'll go to Qatar. There's a lot of things that he said that we liked about it. We created enough chances to win the game. And I thought that was a really interesting quote where he said, we will respect the point. Maxime Crepeau said the same thing. He said to me, I felt the moment was consistently coming. And I think he speaks for a lot of people there that Canada had so much of the ball in that second half that, yes, they could a lot of things they need to clean up in the final third. A lot of the composure and the decision-making, the substitutions made a big impact. We're going to get to Cyle Larin shortly, but I think it was all building up to that moment. We're all waiting for that moment. 1-1 was always going to be better than 0-0 because it meant that we got a moment that fans could go away from here remembering forever. And also the players, you know, you could see what it meant to them, you know, to score a goal like that. And after the game, I spoke to a few of them. Here's Ismael, Kone, who obviously had a great view of the goal as well by playing a lot of big role in it, by building up and then playing in Promise David. Here's what Ismael had to say and what he's felt like after the goal went in.
Honestly, I don't know, like I felt like I was gonna faint. It was crazy because I felt like we did everything to give ourselves a chance to score. We were on top of them, we were pushing the game, we had momentum, we created so many chances, we had one where we hit the bar, so I think we deserved it, so it was just like a relief. But then obviously we knew the job wasn't done, but it feels good in this moment to have that kind of boost to keep going.
All right, so KJ, why don't we
I mean, with Ismael...
Go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead, Andy.
I was
just going to say with Ismael, I thought that he was a real bright spot. You know, ultimately, you know, there's a lot of players that I think really stood up and needed to take on the game in the second half. And I thought that the way that he contributed to that goal, you can just see that he continues to develop. It was a nervy day for a lot of the players. They said consistently coming in that they didn't want to play the occasion. They just wanted to play the game. It was always realistic to say that, I suppose, prior to that, but very difficult to put into context. You could see that they were edgy. But I thought Kone grew into the game and was one of a few players for Canada that you could say had a good game and really stood out.
We were so Canadian in that moment, by the way, KJ, just trying to hand it off to the other person. But we're back on track here. You had mentioned Cyle Larin, so I'm guessing that's another big takeaway for you.
Well, on a day where it belonged to Canadian soccer, the second person the day belonged to is Cyle Larin, and I can't think of a better human being that it deserves to be given that, to be quite frank. You know, Larin's been through the ringer in Canadian football for a long time. You know, this is a player that has done a lot for this program, has got incredible amount of respect in that dressing room. You could see what it meant to those players in the celebration, speaking to them afterwards, what it meant to them to see Cyle Larin get that goal for this team. This is a player that, without the goals on the build-up towards 2022, scoring against Mexico in Edmonton, the goal against the United States in Hamilton, scored the big goal against Trinidad and Tobago to get Canada to Copa America, scored so many monumental goals, and once again he's the big man for the main stage again. So happy for Kyle, and I got a chance to catch up with him after the game.
Just to score a home goal on home soil where I'm from, and just to celebrate with the fans. It was an amazing atmosphere, and have my family there and people who I grew up with. It was amazing.
Kyle, when did you find out you weren't playing, and what was your thought right after it?
Yeah, obviously, I'm upset that you don't get to start that first game in a home World Cup, and it just feels like everything you worked for and then played in your club and scored goals. It's like, what would you do it for? And made a lot of sacrifices to come to this moment.
A lot of sacrifices. Look, Larin ended up being the story on the field. He was the story off the field. When we found out the lineup, that was the major surprise. Everybody expected that they could predict the 11, but they didn't pick Cyle Larin at the start, a player that had got 7 goals in his last 11 games. And I spoke to him afterwards also about the fact that I don't think he scores that goal without having that run of form at Southampton, and he kind of agreed, being in that momentum right now, the instinct to be able to turn and put it away. So, look, you could sense, talking to him, just how disappointed and angry he was. Somebody messaged me when the lineup came out, a former Canadian international, and said, Cyle Larin will be mentally gone now. And I said, what happens if he comes on and scores? That's different. He goes, well, of course that. But to take him out the 11 after playing the last 2 games, it would have been a really tough mental battle for him to come back. But again, sports has a different chapter. And you could see in the celebration that Kyle had as well. And he had a message after that as well.
No, I had it for a while coming into this World Cup, and just to shut everyone up.
That's always the risk you run, KJ. You're so right. Many people were thinking the same thing when not being in the starting 11, but you have to hope that that's where the communication comes in with your manager, Jesse Marsh, and explaining things and still trying to keep his players on track and getting the best of them. I'm going to, pitch this to everyone. I'll start with you, KJ. When you look at bright spots here, other than a goal and getting a point, what else stood out to you today?
Well, Canada, for me, under Jesse Marsh, have created an identity where they are very, very difficult to beat. And even in a moment like today, where Bosnia were able to find their moment themselves and get that goal, it looked at times where, okay, are they not going to get that moment? But under Jesse Marsh, and with this identity of this Canadian team, they find a way once again to not get buried. It is only the 8th time in 32 games under Jesse Marsh that they've gone behind, and only the 3rd time that they've recovered that. That game against Iceland was a big step. The only other game is against Uruguay, when they went back behind and came back. Most of the time when they've got buried in the past, they've suddenly haven't been able to do that. So they're evolving. That for me is the glass half full thing. The other angle for this, though, about what you learn is that, we've still got to look at the team from an open play perspective and go, can they create more? And now we head into a game next week, which has got 2 words labeled to it. And that game is must win. They have to win that game now based on what they've done here. So they've had their safety net. They've got their moment. Now they have to win that game and secure their spot in the last 32.
All right, Christian, appreciate that insight. We'll check in with you at another date.